Wayne Swan is going to be revising down his revenue forecasts by the tune of 20 billion. That's due to the euro crisis. Could we see anything like that happen here with our budget forecasts, do you think?
Well, we'll wait and see. It looks like there would be, around the middle of February, the government would be looking at updating what was in the pre-election update, just following the budget cycle. The Australians did have some fairly bullish growth forecasts early on, so it's not a surprise that in the light of what's happening to their domestic economy, as well as confidence issues out of Europe, that they're revising their plans downward a bit.
So no December update from you like you did in 2008. Why is that?
Well, it's really a matter of how the Treasury see the budget process unfolding. We're in a caretaker period at the moment, so we don't really have the capacity, the ability to make firm decisions about just how the cycle will work. But the advice that I have been given from Treasury is that there would be an update around the budget policy statement, which would probably be published in February. Okay,
and it seems like you're thinking that global events now, since pre-few, are not as bad as global events were in 2008 when you had the Lehman's collapse.
Well,
is that fair to say?
Look, clearly it's not as sudden as the effect of the Lehman's collapse and then the effect of it. But I wouldn't say they're less serious. But I would say that New Zealand is in a better shape to deal with those events than it was. I mean, just by way of example, last year the government raised, in the 12 months to June, 20 billion of debt. This year it's looking at somewhere between 5 and 6 billion, and we've just dealt with a very large maturity.
Net.
So, yeah, net. So the government doesn't have to be, isn't under a big pressure in the debt market. Our banks are similarly in better shape than they were in 2008, although they do have higher refinancing needs than the government does.
Right. And it looks like the IMF, there's reports going around that the IMF might be bailing out Italy or something. We obviously contribute money to the IMF. I mean, how do you feel of New Zealand sort of possibly bailing out a first world economy that's sort of their budget's in a better position than ours, they're effectively running surpluses, and we could effectively be bailing out first world economies if the IMF does step in. Yeah.
Well, we are signed up to the IMF. We've made contributions to them fairly recently. We expect to be part of any discussion about its ongoing role in any kind of bailout in Europe. But we do all have a common interest in Europe finding its way through its problems. The IMF has played a growing but still constrained role in that.
So I guess the IMF was sort of set up to help developing economies if they crashed. I mean, do we have a say in where our money gets used?
Well, we have some say, but we're a contributor. We're effectively a shareholder in the IMF. I think there would be a collective sense that if the IMF can reinforce European efforts, then there may be a role there. But it is absolutely vital that Europe takes responsibility for the costs and consequences of its own actions. You wouldn't want to see the IMF moving in to replace that responsibility.
Right, and it seems that your guys' view is that it's down to the ECB if anything in Europe is to be sorted out. Is that fair to say?
Well, I wouldn't. Look, we're not experts on it. The one country two countries have been down this road. That's the US and the UK, and in both cases it took concerted action from the central bank and the Treasury together to rebuild confidence, because in both of those places their actual debt levels are just as bad, if not worse, than Europe's. So it's the kind of solution we know about because we've seen it put in place. The issues in Europe, as I think I've said before, are fundamentally political and about decision making, rather than whether there's technical solutions. We know what the technical solutions are likely to be. It's whether they can be implemented.
And you've had no December update from Treasury, but have they been in touch to let you know how they think things are going on?
Well, I'll be talking to them over the next day or two. I mean, we're still dealing with the transition in government, but the most recent advice I had from them before the election was they didn't see significant reasons to change what had been put in the pre-election update, and I see the OECD report today refers to the resilience of the New Zealand economy. So they've got forecasts that are a bit different from the Treasury forecast, but not significantly different.
Lower?
Well, they're a bit lower, but we are a resilient economy. For instance, we're seeing the exchange rate come back in a way that reflects, will cushion the effect of any drop in export prices. So we've got that kind, and we've still got room on interest rates. So we're reasonably well positioned if things get a bit negative.